Thank you, Hannah. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining this webinar today, where we're going to be looking at the challenges that we're all facing in the early talent space in a socially distanced world. I do think that's a funny expression, socially distanced, because it's more physically distanced rather than socially distanced, but perhaps a debate for another day. But anyway, thank you all very much for joining. I'm really pleased. We've got some fantastic insights we're going to be sharing from you today. And we're going to start off with a quick welcome from Gill at the 5 Cent Club.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This is an experiment for the 5% Club, and I really want to thank MyKindaFuture and Grant Thornton for helping us make it happen. As people who know us will know, we've always done physical events and networking events where everyone likes to chat over a coffee, but the times we're in means we can't. So hopefully introducing these new initiatives will really keep momentum going around exchange of best practice. As Simon said, I'm Gill, Cronin, Director of Operations at the club. For those of you who don't know us, we were formed in 2013 by Leo Quinn, Group Chief Executive of Balfour Beatty. Essentially, Leo saw very high youth unemployment and then the lack of skills coming through to the workplace, and started the club to get fellow businesses to commit to having 5% of their workforce in earn and learn, apprentices, grads. And today we see the threat of high youth unemployment. Again, the Resolution Foundation report this morning, lots of predictions, and I know Simon's going to touch on some other survey information. And I think, you know, never have the reason why the club was started been more relevant. So, as I say, that's why we're here today. The speakers are now going to introduce themselves, and I'll also be doing a close at the end. So, thank you very much.
Jill, thank you very much, and yeah, a big thank you to the 5% Club. So, so this is who we've got who are going to be sharing some data and some information. When they each come to their relevant sections, they're going to introduce themselves, and themselves includes me, which I'll come on to in a moment. But that's who we're going to be hearing from today, sharing some insights. There will be, between a number of points during the webinar, we're going to have an opportunity for a Q&A. So please do use the chat function within the within this Zoom platform to pose any questions that you have at any time. Don't wait for when it says Q&A to then think about your questions. If there's something that's been said that you want to ask about, do pop it into the chat box, and what will happen, my colleague Hannah will pick up on those questions when we have the Q&A. She'll share the question out loud so everyone can hear it, and then the relevant person will respond. If there is a specific question related to who you've just heard from, if you can just put their name in brackets if you want them to specifically to respond, but if you don't mind who it is, just pose the question. I'm conscious we're going to cover a lot today, so we may not get to all the questions, and so for those that we don't get to, apologies, but what we will do is respond to all those questions, and in what we share with you on the back of this event today, we will answer all the questions that we didn't manage to, if we don't manage to get to them on this session. So please don't hold back from questions. We want this to be a really insightful session for you all. So use the chat function, and we will break the session up with questions as we go along. So that's how the session is going to run. I'm going to kick things off. But before I do that, we've got obviously an agenda we're going to cover off today. So I'm going to share some insights into some data from the ISE as to the impact of COVID on early talent. And I'm going to be perhaps brave or foolish and make some predictions as to what I think this means. We're then going to hear from Chris from NetWorld, who's got some really, really great insights into the experience of pivoting digitally. So some really great insights from him. Katie's going to talk about the hugely important issue of diversity and how it is and continues to be a really significant business imperative, all the more so arguably in these times. And I think what you'll hear from today will back that up. And then, as I say, throughout we'll have questions, the opportunity for us to pick up on questions that you ask as we go through. So that's what we're going to cover off today. So as I say, I'm going to kick things off. So my name is Simon. I'm the strategic lead for talent at MyKindaFuture. MyKindaFuture, we've operated in the early talent space for about 25 years, helping organizations attract, recruit and onboard early talent, so in the apprentice and graduate space. I also sit on the board of the Institute for Student Employers, of which some of you I'm sure are probably members and will know of. And my specific role at the ISE over the last couple of years in that role has been to shape the ISE strategy for our members around apprenticeships. So I've been driving that for the last couple of years. And some of the data I'm going to share with you today is on the back of a fantastic piece of research that the ISE have done. It was literally published yesterday. Some of you may have seen it, some of you may not. What I'm going to do is just touch on some of those key early findings and also some reflections on those. So if we look at what the impact has been of COVID-19 and lockdown on the early talent space, so for this year, for the 2020 intake, you can see there the numbers of the reduction in volumes for this year that companies have made as a result of COVID, and particularly impactful on interns and placements and apprenticeships, which is obviously a concern. And I'm sure we can have some interesting discussions about why it's higher with apprentices and school leavers than it is with grads. Interestingly, a third of companies are delaying start date. Might be just by a couple of weeks or a month, but some as late as January for what would normally have been a September start. So we are seeing companies start later, and the impact of that is keeping those individuals engaged, and or indeed, and I was having a conversation with an organisation just before this around what can be done to bring induction forward ahead of them actually starting. So again, that might be an interesting topic for today. And the other big one, which won't come as a surprise, is about 3/4 of those organisations surveyed are moving induction and L&D online. Not a big surprise, but really big, high volumes looking to do that. The other interesting piece it looks at is 2021 hiring numbers. So what's that going to look like as we sit here today? This research was completed the end of the first week of May. As we all know, it's a very fast-moving world. But I think I'm a little bit of a glass is half full, so I think what's reassuring is a third as we sit here today, I'm not expecting any change, 15% less, but 10% up. But 40% still, to be decided, and I'll reflect on that a little bit more in a moment. But there's some top-line numbers, and the survey you can access from the ISE website, and in this deck, which we'll share with you, there's an embedded link to the full report. Looking at this in just getting behind the numbers a little bit. There is definitely some significant changes that we've seen, and I'm sure all of you will experiencing that, is the move to virtual and digital. So we know lots of assessment centres have moved to digital, but also we are seeing both now, but also importantly from a planning point of view for next academic year, a move to delivering obviously virtual events in schools, colleges and universities. And the upside of that, without question, is that it can be open up to a broader range of talent and a more diverse range of talent because you're doing it virtually. And also, we've definitely seen an increase in activity around virtual experiences of work. And I use that phrase deliberately rather than work experience, but looking at more agile ways to deliver more young people an experience of work to help them better understand their potential routes post-education. And what's been really reassuring, and we've seen this very strongly at MyKindaFuture, is a number of the organisations who we support for their traditional face-to-face work experience. We've repivoted that for digital for them, but they're doing more of it because it can be done digitally, so that there aren't the same constraints, and particularly looking to engage with young people in cold spots around the UK. So again, really trying to make an impact on what Gill mentioned earlier, about how this situation we're in, unfortunately, is going to most heavily impact the least advantaged. So definitely some opportunities to make a dent in that through virtual work experience. Wellbeing continues to be a really important focus. Unsurprisingly, we're living it all at the moment, both with our furloughed staff and with obviously the impact of working from home. Definitely some post-furlough concerns about how to manage and support people come back into work and what will be a new business as usual. So what can be done to do that? And again, at MyKindaFuture, we've been running a number of webinars to share insights into what can and is being done. And then finally, I thought I'd make some predictions, always a dangerous thing to do, but I thought I'd give it a go, about what I think is likely. And I've worked in the early talent space for over 25 years, so I've seen a number of recessions. So in terms of some predictions, I think, and I'm sure some of you are seeing this and feel this yourself, it is going to be a catalyst for more and permanent change, both in terms of digital, but just more generally. So whether that's more working from home, smaller office spaces, whatever it happens to be, without question, we're going to see some permanent changes on the back of this, even so far as, for organizations who recruit at scale and run a lot of assessment centers, making them virtual permanently, but then doing something face-to-face with those that are offered, either pre-offer or post-offer. So I definitely think some changes. I also would anticipate, and this is a little bit backed up by the data, but I think most employers will be going live as normal in the autumn term for their 2021 intake. So that will continue, but I would imagine with lower numbers, but with the hope and expectation and knowledge that they can increase those numbers as we see to what extent this is a V or a U-shaped recession that we go through. So I do think some of those early numbers might be a bit depressing, but my instinct is, and again, if I reflect back on previous recessions that I've operated in, that's what I can see happening. And the other piece is part of prediction, but also a bit of a hope, is that we don't lose sight of why early talent is so important. And I know this really gets, everyone who you're going to be hearing from today, and I know this is at the heart of what 5% Club is all about, is early talent is crucial for future skills, aging workforce, the impact of Brexit. I know Chris has got some views on that you'll be hearing from, but we mustn't lose sight of that because we will come out the other side of this and we need to come out stronger. I think there's still really, we've seen in the ISE data, but there's still a real appetite for employers to engage with educators and students. So this is really reassuring, but it really must continue, and particularly with the D&I focus, which I know Katie's going to talk about, but making sure that the impact of this really doesn't have a huge impact on those least advantaged young people. And it also is with my other sort of hope is with the move to more and more digital, we don't lose sight of a humanized process and recognizing that, when we're attracting and engaging with and hiring young people, they're people. And we still need a process that makes them feel not processed, that makes them feel like an individual, that is personalized, an individual to them, because that's actually what's going to help us do what all of us want to be doing, is whatever our hiring numbers are, is recruiting the best and most diverse talent. And, and that must continue to be our focus. Whatever our numbers are, is how do we best do that? And a really important part of that is making sure that the young person is at the center of all our thinking around what we do and how we do it. So those would be some reflections from me. And what I'm going to do, because I'm conscious of time, I'm going to hand straight over to Chris, who is going to share some really practical insights as to what his and his experience and the experience of Network Rail has been. So Chris, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Simon. I'm Chris Shirley. I am the Apprenticeship Services Manager at Network Rail, which in effect means I am responsible for everything up to the point of delivery with our apprenticeship programs, and also heavily involved in our strategy and industry groups. To just give a little bit of context, Network Rail, we have just over 1,200 apprentices in flight at the moment. And we take on between 150 and 200 every 6 months on our volume program, which is our level 3 rail apprenticeship program. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about for the next 5 or 6 minutes. So if we have the next slide, Simon. A problem statement. It became very clear early March that this was not going to be a normal cohort and that we would need to make changes. I did just like Simon's description of pivoting digitally, which is not a phrase that I had heard before, but I think applies perfectly in this situation. So as it says here, our problem statement was we had 140 apprentices whose contracts of employment started on the 29th of March. We had 150 apprentices who were partway through or hadn't quite finished their residential program. Our new starters have no Network Rail assets for IT access. And as importantly, for the 900 apprentices that are currently in flight and away from our residential training centres, how do we maintain progression and learning, one, to benefit the apprentices, and two, to keep the FSA happy should they choose to audit us, which we all know is part of the job. So if we move on, we approach this in 3 different ways, through collaboration, innovation, and agility. Firstly, I do have to send out and give proper kudos to Babcock Training Solutions, who are our third-party deliverer and main provider for the Level 3 programme. They have pulled out all the stops and worked very, very closely with us to make things happen. So 2 weeks before the start, the lockdown was recognised. Babcock managed to sneak in a rather large order for interactive smartboards from ProWise. So apologies to anybody who was trying to get hold of those. We may well have put you to the post. But that was a key part of being able to move our delivery online, was having the technology available in-house to still have our trainers facing front and seeing our apprentices. We linked that up with MS Teams, like probably 60% of the world at the moment. We found the MS Teams platform extremely useful, extremely secure, and very intuitive and easy to use. Bearing in mind that a lot of our apprentices that started with us in March, never been in business before, would never have seen the business IT systems, and we had no chance to induct them or train them properly on it because we needed them on it to be able to train them and induct them. We have run a 2-trainer system now. We have a lead trainer, a little bit like this call. We have a lead trainer who is doing the delivery and a secondary trainer who is often working remotely, controlling the delivery and the chat rooms and the breakout rooms. And we went from a standing start with no remote delivery to full remote delivery for our academics, our health and safety, and our onboarding and induction programs within 2 weeks. To make all of that innovation happen, we had to work with our corporate IT teams. We use dual factor authentication, as most people do nowadays, but that requires Network Rail assets and to be on a Network Rail property to do that. We worked closely with our IT teams and found a workaround to that solution, and we wouldn't have been able to get to where we are without that support. We also have recognised very early on that the apprentices that we were onboarding were expecting one experience and are receiving a completely different experience. So we've also spent quite a lot of time using our Yammer and using team chats and actually giving virtual tours of the facilities. So literally people walking around doing a commentary with the video camera as they go, and people can ask questions in the hope, obviously, they will need to return to our residential training centres at some point to do their technical training. But again, it's about trying to give them as close an experience as they would have normally got to this. And then finally, agility. We stood up a new LMS, learner management system, in 4 weeks to aid us with the movement of learning materials, assignments, marking, and keeping that going. We had to put remote working systems for the support teams. Obviously, it is far more than just trainers that are delivering, and we had to procure and install technology solutions in record time. whilst maintaining the safeguarding elements that are an absolute crucial part of the apprenticeship. What that led to was, as of the start of May, we have now got 270 learners being taught simultaneously through remote delivery, which from a standing start, I'm extremely proud of the work that both my team and Babcock have done to do that. Have the next slide, Simon. So I thought I'd share a few lessons learned. Training trainers in remote delivery, the earlier the better. We had 2 weeks to do it. We have now kind of started a program to develop their skills. It is different to being just in a normal face-to-face classroom. The other big one we learned very early on was that end user equipment is vital. The younger generation, shall we say, laptops and desktops, we have discovered, are not commonly owned. Xboxes and tablets seem to be the preferred methods of mass communication and media use in the home. So those of them that didn't have laptops, which is part of the reason why we rushed out the IT assets, found it very difficult to connect. Not impossible, but difficult. So it is important to make sure that the end user has the equipment. Monday mornings and Friday afternoons are bandwidth pinch points. Who knew? I completely expected Monday mornings. I didn't necessarily expect Friday afternoons as being bandwidth pinch points. And headphones and headsets, we have found, are vital. They make the quality of delivery and interaction so much better. Camera use makes a difference for the trainers, we've found, because they can see who they're talking to. And actually, we would now do more around pre-briefing of the users in terms of user guides and everything else, rather than trying to get them up and working remotely straight away. Finally, the elephant in the room that we are facing at the moment is how we recommence face-to-face skills training. Obviously, remote delivery is brilliant for academics and knowledge. It's not quite so good for that face-to-face stuff. So we need to we're working through that at the moment, along with government, following government advice. So my final slide, just very quickly, I don't think I've gone too far over just yet. Just some questions in general to perhaps think about and to perhaps move forward. And a bit like Simon, what does this mean for the future? We're in a position where we won't be starting a cohort in September because COVID arrived in the middle of our recruitment process, so we are not fully recruited yet. Now that is restarting, but it is going to push us back. So how do we recruit volume and minimize face-to-face contact in an area where that's probably likely to be the normal now for some quite considerable time? We have a specific challenge around medicals. We're safety critical industry, and these are safety critical employees. They have to have a medical before they can start. We are finding that difficult to source at the moment. Will we continue doing remote delivery? Will that become the new norm? I think the answer is probably yes to a point. But can you deliver organizational culture remotely? And that's a question that I think we need to kind of examine a bit more. And also, what's the cost implication? Obviously, smaller class sizes means more resources, more technology. Where will we get our trainers from? It's a small pool that we're all fishing in for qualified trainers. And the last two thoughts really are, will the skills gap increase? My personal feeling is that as we come out of this, there will be a lot of people who have got 25, 30, 35 years of service who are in a position to be able to retire and perhaps have chosen not to for whatever reason. My concern is that may lead to them actually saying and reevaluating now and saying, well, actually life's too short. Let's go and do something else while we can. That's problem one. Problem two, as Simon alluded to, there is likely to be a dip in the numbers recruited. And I'm talking generally now rather than Network Rail specific. So we will have more people retiring and less people being recruited, which suggests that the skills gap will start to increase. And then finally, that B word, Brexit. Throughout all of this, it is looking more and more likely that Brexit will be no deal, which will bring in the immigration curves, which will bring in the migration curves, which will reduce the number of workers that are available in our workforce. So my question is will there be a perfect storm of less recruitment, more retirement, and a smaller labour pool to choose from? And what is the impact then on our future, on our early careers programs, on our apprenticeship programs, and actually on being able to fill our skills gaps? So that's for me. I just tried to give you a flavour of what we've done, how we've done it, and perhaps some of our key points that we need to consider from a strategic point of view going forwards. I'll pass back to Simon.
Chris, thank you very much. That was really insightful and really open and honest about the challenges that you've been through and what you've done to address them, and obviously the ones you've still got ahead going forward. So Hannah, have there been any questions that have been asked? I appreciate they might need to be grouped because there might be similar themes, but any questions for what either I've shared or what Chris has shared at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. We've had a couple come in, and I'll kind of read them out chronologically. The first one came from your session specifically. And Lana has asked, how is access to tech for applicants from a lower socioeconomic background being factored into planning by organisations?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think there's a number of different examples that we've experienced, so I can definitely talk about it from our own experience. So for example, when it comes to things like work experience, we did some research and found some research which showed that anything between 20 and 35% of young people don't have access to technology on an ongoing basis. So we've actually planned into the work experience that we've repivoted to digital for up to 25 to 35% to be physically sent the materials in the post for them to take part in those activities. So that's one piece. I think the other piece is what's really critical, and the term we use a lot is having technology that's not always on. So in terms of what the activities they're having to do, it's not requiring them to be permanently online for 2 hours, for 4 hours, for 7 hours, whatever it happens to be, because if they're working from home, bandwidth issues, shared tech, all that kind of stuff is another really important piece. And the other piece that Chris alluded to, and you may want to jump in on this, Chris, is around they've got smartphones and tablets, but they don't have laptops. So again, thinking about what works on mobile, on smartphones and on tablets, but what needs a laptop or a PC. And again, just trying to think about how much of it can be served up where possible on smartphones or tablets. And I certainly, from our experience at MyKindaFuture with our connector platform, that's been a really important part of the content design, is what can be served up on smartphones.
I think yeah, just very quickly, I'd absolutely concur on 10%, because with our program, we found about 10% didn't have the right kit to be able to access. The other challenge that we have that links into that we have seen with this is probably 5 or 6% of our apprentices don't have or can't afford sufficient data plans or sufficiently fast Wi-Fi or internet connections. I'm not sure how we fix that, but you're certainly right to kind of about the people that don't have access are the most disadvantaged as always. So we can send the kit, but if you haven't got the connectivity, it doesn't matter what kit you've got. Yeah,
I think that's such a good point. And linked to that is, and we've seen this in the tech space already, but this move to cloud-based technology and a move away from apps, because apps eat memories on phones. And so cloud-based, again, is another really important direction of travel when it comes to tech. Any other questions, Hannah? I'm conscious of time. Any other questions?
Thank you. Just one more, and I think it feeds in quite nicely to what we were just saying. Ian has asked, specifically you, Chris, have you identified practical skills that cannot be trained digitally? And if so, how will you overcome this?
I think for us, obviously, there is quite a lot of our technical skills that require hands-on time on the kit. Specifically for our new cohorts, we have to teach them basic tool skills, how to use a drill, how to use a hammer, how to use electricals, how to wire a plug, and at its most base level. That's what we're working through at the moment. At the moment, we are delivering knowledge elements, not technical skills elements. We are working on being able to bring back very small classes with all the right PPE to be able to deliver that. But ultimately, to maintain the railway, you have to have hands on the kit to learn how to do it. And that's our biggest challenge, is how do we restart that technical skills training? There is only so much you can do with virtual reality or augmented reality before you need to know how the screw goes in the hole, or how you separate the rails, or how you stress the rails. It needs hands-on stuff. So I'm afraid I don't have an answer for that yet. And if I did, I would be setting myself up as a consultancy.
And on that point, I'm just conscious of time, Hannah, so I'm sure there are probably some other questions, but just in the interest of time, and I want to make sure that Katie gets a chance to share. So I'm now going to hand over to our friends at Grant Thornton and to Katie, who's going to talk about the diversity piece. Shall I skip straight on to the next slide, Katie?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Good morning. I think we're still morning, everyone. Katie Nightingale, Grant Thornton. I work within our business consulting team there, focused on helping clients with their people agenda. But in my previous role, I was head of early careers at the Care Group. So very close to my heart is supporting new, emerging, diverse talent. I also have a role and the privilege to be on the 5% Club advisory panel. So still continuing to be very much part of that as well. I think hopefully, and I think most people on the call will probably know that actually to have a diverse and inclusive workforce is absolutely a must. But there is research out there that does say that those that are more diverse and are more inclusive are more profitable and more prosperous, and we know that that's the case. And so I think at the moment, particularly with everything that's going on, it's absolutely vital that we start to consider the impact on diverse workforce and being inclusive particularly. So Simon, if you wouldn't mind moving on to the next slide for me. Thank you to my glamorous assistant. So what are we seeing? And I think a couple of things have already kind of been brought up by Simon and Chris as well, but we are seeing a disproportionate effect on individuals from particularly BAME backgrounds and from those from lower socio-economic backgrounds, and very much picked up. We're going into a virtual world, but obviously there's a huge proportion of individuals, particularly from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, who don't have access to this tech. So there is going to be a disadvantage there. And as we start to move into a world where people are saying we're moving into the new normal, and we're expecting people to be much more digital, not be in offices, that will start to cause a bit of a problem. So we really need to be thinking about what we do with our working practices and what's going to benefit different people. We're also seeing a shift in expectations of both existing and prospective employees. People are now getting more time at home, they're spending more time with their families, they're perhaps having reduced working hours, they may be enforced on them, but they're seeing the benefit of that. And actually, as Chris said, people might start to think, I want to work, less hours, I want to enjoy life, I want to get better work-life balance. And they'll also be thinking about different things that are more important to them. So when I come on to talk about the employee value proposition, your promise to your people, it's thinking about what you might need to be doing differently with that. A couple of things I do want to pick up though that we are seeing, and very hot off the press coming into the news, is the increased uncertainty for new job seekers. We are seeing a huge amount of those claiming job seekers allowance, so there is a much bigger increase in unemployed, which puts a huge a burden on or more competition, I suppose, for graduates, for apprentices, or for new individuals coming into the job market. So it's really going to be tough on them, particularly as they're going to be much more competition. So how do we support them to provide them with opportunities to be working whilst they can't, they perhaps can't find a role? How do we provide that work experience and that engagement, even if we're not recruiting ourselves? What can we do as employers? We are going to be seeing actually a lot of people where we've got the huge unemployment are going to start thinking differently about which careers that they might want to go into. They might have to, particularly those within the hospitality and travel industry, there's going to be potentially quite a while before they can come back into the workplace. Are they going to be starting to look at different careers? So how do we support people moving across from different industries and look at those transferable skills so that, again, we can benefit our own pipeline? So as employers, there's just a couple of things that I kind of thought would be useful to kind of pick up on. And again, the kind of things that we're talking to clients about at Grant Thornton. And as I've mentioned, you know, as we are seeing differences in expectations and we need to be thinking about an inclusive culture and increasing diversity, think about your promise to your people. So your employee value proposition. So that's everything from what you look like in terms of your image externally when you're attracting people, but also all of those things that your employees will get from you from working with you. And so need to start thinking about, is your kind of remuneration package, your benefits, are they still relevant to what people are wanting and needing? Something that we're talking to clients about in terms of sort of flexible benefits is thinking about it with the well-being lenses, and that being financial and economic, physical and social, and psychological and emotional. And what I mean by that is starting to think about different flexible options that people can think about adding to that will add value to their life. And that might even be things like, if they're looking for the need to have more tech in their life, or, you know, they're looking at, you know, broadband is important to them. What are we doing that we maybe could support that in that way? So something definitely to think about there. We're all starting to think about different ways of working, the new normal. Again, we're talking to clients about how do you make agile working work for you? And when we mean agile, we don't just mean about people suddenly all working from home. We mean about maximizing output with, you know, minimum kind of constraints on employees, and it being flexible about how and where they work to perform at their best. So what we're saying is three kind of steps that you need to take around that is you need to kind of assess or reflect on what your current situation is and what's the ambitions as an organization, what's the time frame and what's the cost of that. And when you're doing this, make sure, and I can't stress this enough, that you are talking to your people. Understand what's working for them. What will work for one won't work for another. We've talked a lot about mental health and well-being, and actually working from home is not going to suit everyone. Sometimes home environments will be not a safe place for people, and their work environment is where they go to get away from that. So, you know, by shutting off offices is actually going to have a disproportionate effect on some individuals, and potentially, again, it may be those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds because they don't have the home life to support that. Secondly, think about your planning. What is your change agility to be able to kind of make this change to a more agile way of working? Think about that in terms of your property, technology, and your people. And then finally, when it comes to the implementation piece, change management is vital. There may be a lot of resistance to change. There may be a lack of skills around that. So really think about the physical and the psychological changes to be made. And lastly, you know, we're talking about attracting talent here, particularly early talent. Really think about and take this time at the moment to consider, are your recruitment practices going to be fit for purpose? Are they supporting people from all backgrounds? And bear in mind, we've talked about the ability to have access to tech. Are we going to find that if we move everything online and we do everything virtually, which sounds amazing, are we going to be really kind of putting barriers up to those from perhaps different backgrounds and more excluded groups? So have a think about what you can do, how you kind of level playing fields across the whole, each stage of the process, and how are you aiding your teams to make inclusive hiring decisions as you go forward. But as I say, everything with this in terms of what we're seeing and what we're kind of advising clients is keep talking to your teams, keep engaging, and thinking about when you are talking to individuals, you know, that keeping warm element, what can you do in terms of conversations and engagement that will kind of keep people engaged and keep the confidence up as you start to kind of build back, and hopefully we start to see recruitment kind of coming back on board again. So thank you very much for listening. I'll pass back to Simon.
Katie, thank you very much. So, question. So, Hannah, what questions have we had that we need to share and get answers to?
There haven't been any more come through at the moment, but we do have a final opportunity shortly. So perhaps we can cover off any questions that come in then.
Great stuff. Okay, fantastic. So what I thought would be nice to do now, so Katie and Chris, just to kind of reflect on what we've kind of heard so far and what's kind of particularly stood out, and just to kind of get the ball rolling. And I thought it might be useful in the last couple of minutes for us to have a discussion about it, which might generate some more questions. But I think I was really... when we ran through this yesterday, Chris, and then when you've talked about it today, I was really struck by that point about the perfect storm. and that does definitely, all my experience, and I'm sure yours too, which is why you felt it, kind of gives us a sense that is something that is fairly likely. And just what thoughts have you had about how we might try to mitigate that as best we can? Then what thoughts you've had, Chris or Katie?
I think for me, we've almost got double uncertainty now, because we've got the uncertainty of what COVID's going to mean for the future. We've got the uncertainty of Brexit. I think there is potential for mitigation in the fact, and Katie just alluded, the news this morning is that 850,000 more unemployed over the last month. So although we may see a reduction in the labour pool, we may see actually, for the first time in quite a long time, a domestic labour pool that is available and willing to be trained. I think one of the mitigations, and I think apprenticeships have a big part to play in this, because I think there is the opportunity for reskilling people. It is unlikely that the vast majority of people that are losing their jobs at the moment are going to be fully qualified for us engineers that can step into a role tomorrow. However, that's why we have our apprenticeship programs to do that reskilling. So I think apprenticeships potentially will play a more significant role in the new world than they have to date, for all age groups. So I think perhaps that's one way, but we will need to start that process now. Waiting until December is too late. I think it's linking in with that recruitment piece, Katie. I think, are our recruitment processes fit for purpose? Well, actually, do we need to reconsider what the ideal candidate looks like going forwards?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think and this is where I talk about inclusive decision makings. We do need to kind of challenge what an apprentice or what a graduate or someone on an earn and learn looks like. And I think we still often have the visual image of a young person coming straight out of school. And I think we are absolutely going to be seeing a huge amount of people that will, not necessarily be wanting to make a career change, but having to, simply because they have no other choice. And that's going to be very, very scary. But I think as employers, we have got apprenticeships, which are a great opportunity to do that. But we do need to be thinking about how can we fast track people into roles, because there'll be a lot of people that have got huge responsibilities. They've got mortgages, they've got kids, partners, dependents of all sorts, and they really need to be getting into work quite quickly. But then as employers have got to make sure that they're coming in safely and they've got the right skills. But so I think that the sooner we can start thinking about that, and then really attracting that more diverse pool of talent, but they've got huge amounts of experience, huge amounts of transferable skills. So what can we do to start thinking about how we can attract those individuals?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, isn't it? It's around, because there's a number of elements to that, isn't there? There's the kind of, and you've kind of alluded to it, Katie, in your sessions. It's that psychological piece about imposter syndrome, and is this me, and can I learn these new skills? And so, that's one part of it. And then, for them to apply for those opportunities, it may be they've not applied for jobs in a lot of years, and so just aren't experienced. So there's the support that we're going to need to put around them to maximize the chances of those individuals then securing those roles, so that companies are bringing in that diversity of talent to address the challenges that they've got going forward. So I think that's that feels like a whole topic in itself. That we could probably have a whole other a session on it, and I've been scribbling all kinds of ideas down, so that might well be the case. I'm conscious of time, and we said to people we'd be done by 11:45. So Anna, were there any final questions?
Yeah, just one request from Sophia. No, there's a couple more coming in now. So Sophia asked Simon if we could share the link to the ISC research piece that you mentioned earlier. Yeah,
it's the deck which we will share on the back of this with everybody has an embedded link in my slide. So yeah, it's all in there when we share the deck. Yep.
Fab. And then Mary has asked, we have decided to defer our graduate intakes this year until early next year. What practical advice would the speaker give that keep those graduates engaged virtually?
So is this people who've been, just for clarity, Mary, so if you could just type this, is this grads who've been offered a job were expected to start September, but they won't now be starting until January?
So
Yes,
I can kind of give a little bit of insight to how we do this. So I think we are going to be starting our grads in September, but our keep warm activities start about 3 months before they join anyway. So we are starting now to point them into our resource centres, particularly around our safety side of things, get an understanding of the system of the railway. You know, the railway is not just track, it is a system of processes. So we have developed a number of online bite-sized pieces, and we release one of those every 2 or 3 weeks that give them a bit more information and a bit more knowledge about what they're coming into and how they're doing it. We run webinars, not too dissimilar to this one. We try and get them in, although we can't do that at the moment, obviously, but we try and bring them into the office for a day or two just to orientate them into what their learning environment was going to make. So really for us, it's about providing them with meaningful information that will help them when they arrive.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think it's meaningful. And the other piece you mentioned there, Chris, is bite size. That's really, really important. And if we look at our experience at MyKindaFuture with our tech platform connector, which does exactly that, Chris, it serves up that bite-sized chunks of content. When it's used in the pre-boarding space, if you get that bite-sized content right, and you issue it at specific times, and then you back it up with, we have digital mentors within the platform, we're looking at completion rates of every piece of content at between 80 and 85% by every new starter. So, and bite size is key to that. Is absolutely key to getting those engagement levels and them staying with it. Any other questions, Hannah? Sorry, Katie.
I was just going to add to that. You know, we talked about the digital mentors. Is not to be taken lightly around the role of the line managers during this as well. Yeah. It's very, very important. There are multiple touch points, but bearing in mind that our line managers, this is a whole new experience potentially for managing teams remotely. So again, I would sort of talk to the leaders of the organisation, the HR teams. You know, please make sure your managers have got the right information, the right support and tools to manage people effectively, particularly those where we've got younger people, well, not necessarily younger, I shouldn't say that, new talent coming in, that they have got access to someone to speak to, or multiple people.
Yeah, fantastic. Hannah, I'm really conscious of time. Let's pick one more question. Is it one more question, and then we need to wrap up?
One more question. And Kate has asked, with more people needing to change roles and the change of demographic we may see with apprenticeships, do you see apprenticeship salaries needing to change as they are traditionally lower?
Good question.
It's a really good question. I think for us, I think apprenticeship salaries should reflect the role that the apprentices are coming into.
Yeah.
So I think if you're talking level 2, level 3 apprenticeships at entry level, I think the salaries will reflect that. I think if you're talking at higher education levels, 4, 5, 6, and 7, you're going to have to pay more to get the talent into your organisation. Competition will be higher.
Yeah, definitely. And the other piece is, the other big unknown is supply and demand. You know, we just don't know what impact that is going to have. But I think certainly, I concur with exactly what you said, Chris. I think it's about the salary needs to reflect the role. You know, regardless of what you, sadly or positively, regardless of your experience previously. Guys, that's it. I'm going to hand over to Gill just to close things off. But a big thank you for all for listening. I'm conscious we've overrun a little bit, but hopefully those questions were really useful.
Right, yeah, just to say, as Simon just say, thank you everyone for joining us. Chris, Katie and Simon, thank you for your presentations and all your prep, really great. And I too have been jotting down loads of ideas of what we can do going forward. I know Hannah's going to be emailing all attendees with the link to the slides, and I'd love to get some feedback from people. If people who joined us would like either what they thought of the webinar, further future ideas for other events, we want to continue the conversation, and I think that this is going to be this is going to be a challenge for quite some time yet. And my very last comment is going to be a huge thank you to Hannah, who has organised us all, organised all registrations, all delegates, and without Hannah this probably wouldn't run as quite as smoothly as it did do. So Hannah, a massive thank you.
Thank you very much, Gill. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thanks everyone.
Thank
Take
you
care.
all.
Bye.
Stay safe.